camera. You give it, give it, off, give it, off, give down, it, down. Give it.
Hello everyone, I'm Alex Navarro, and welcome to my year-end list on Screen.com. I'm going to be taking you through my top 10 films of the year, as well as some of the worst movies I saw this year, because, let's face it, highlighting the bad just makes the good look all that much better. So without further ado, let's get right to the crap. Grown-ups. So I caught this on a plane, and thus, admittedly, I may have missed some of the racier gags this film had to offer. Specifically, I think I was spared David Spade's ass. That said, this is easily the worst comedy of the year, and simultaneously a punch-to-the-face reminder of how low formerly funny people like Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, and David Spade are willing to sink to make some damn money. I'm not including Kevin James and Rob Schneider in that statement because, let's face it, they were always willing to lower themselves for this kind of thing. Straight up, this movie is a comedic abortion. This half-assed heist thriller is unquestionably terrible. It's got miserable acting, no plot to speak of, limp, poorly edited action scenes, heists that are actually ripped off from other heist movies. But I think actually the most noteworthy thing about Takers is how much it made me hate anyone who might have liked it. This is a movie specifically targeted at douchebags. Guys who want to live out their badass thief fantasies, which really aren't so much badass as they are woefully uncreative. Because really all thieves do is just hang around their palatial homes, sipping expensive whiskey while decked out in crisply tailored suits, periodically pausing to bang strings of topless female extras. Non-speaking, of course. On some level, I might have been fine with all that douchebaggery if the movie actually had like an ounce of fun to its name. Instead, director John Lusenhop gives this thing a dour, hyper-serious tone as he tries to turn these swanky ass bags into sympathetic characters. Shocker, it doesn't work. Seriously, the more I thought about this movie over the course of the year, the more I loathed it. Do you remember when Wes Craven was a competent, hell, even brilliant writer and director of horror films? You might not after you sit through this putrid and pointless slasher flick. Featuring a ludicrously stupid backstory that takes nearly half an hour of screen time to set up, one of the lamest serial killers ever to be projected on a screen, and not a single solitary scare anywhere in the film. My sole to take is sheer incompetence from top to bottom. Oh, and the 3D post-conversion? Yeah, the less said about that, the better. In recent years, M. Night Shyamalan's descent from reasonably interesting filmmaker into self-absorbed hack has largely been relegated to victimizing a few likable actors trapped within his terrible screenplays. For The Last Airbender, Shyamalan victimizes not only the actors he entombs within this laborious, atrocious fiasco, but a beloved cartoon license in Nickelodeon's Avatar: The Last Airbender series. For fans of that show, this movie is an abomination, effectively obliterating all the qualities that made the show so likable in favor of painful caricatures and long, inexplicable bouts of expository narration that don't just over-explain the film's mythos, but also manage to skip over entire pieces of story and relationship building. And for those who don't know the show, this is just a baffling mess of an adventure, nonsensically plotted and painful to watch, whether it's in the atrocious upconverted 3D presentation or without. I know this movie made a lot of money, but seriously, if there is a God in heaven, Shyamalan will never be allowed to touch this franchise again. Phew! Well, those were some truly terrible films, but with that, I think it's time to move on to the top 10. The best, the greatest, my favorites. The last thing I expected to feel strongly about this year was yet another documentary about the War on Terror. But Tim Hetherington and Sebastian Junger's National Geographic doc about a unit stationed in Afghanistan's brutal Korengal Valley isn't just another war doc. For one thing, this movie has no real message to speak of. It is a pure, unfiltered account of what the kids in this unit endured over the course of their deployment. It shows both sides of the war, the harrowing, deadly battles, and then the days upon days of just simply waiting around for someone to shoot at you. Restrepo is simultaneously refreshing and exhausting. It's a gritty look at the modern war in Afghanistan without any of the usual anti-war rabble-rousing or jingoistic overtones you tend to get from docs on either side of the argument. Simply put, this movie is pure. Darren Aronofsky's ballet psychodrama is one of the strangest, prettiest, trashiest, and just flat-out craziest movies I've seen in a good long while. It tells the tale of Natalie Portman's Nina, an absurdly dedicated ballerina who finds herself taking the lead in a new production of Swan Lake. But she's troubled by her inability to evoke the dark, uncontrolled emotions necessary to portray the Black Swan. What follows is a weird combination between Showgirls, Requiem for a Dream, and The Red Shoes, more or less. Much as he did in The Wrestler, Aronofsky goes to great lengths to show us behind-the-curtain world of ballet. But unlike that movie, which was all grit and realistic drama, Black Swan goes absolutely batshit at times as we dive deeper and deeper into Nina's psyche, her obsession with getting in touch with her darker side, and her extreme paranoia about threats to her newfound prima ballerina status, including a decidedly tawdry one coming in the form of a rival ballerina played by Mila Kunis. At its best, Black Swan is utterly mesmerizing, beautifully shot, especially the final tragic dance sequence, and completely out of its mind. I dug every second of it. South Korea is consistently becoming the source of where many of my favorite foreign films are coming from each and every year. Between The Chaser, The Good, the Bad, the Weird, and Bong Joon-ho's dark-as-hell crime thriller Mother, this was yet another great year for South Korean flicks. Though among those great movies, Mother was by far the one that stuck with me the most. Lead actress Kim Hae-ja is absolutely a force as the obsessively doting mother to a mentally challenged man who is accused of murdering a local schoolgirl. In a plot that feels distinctively Hitchcockian through and through, Kim's mother takes it upon herself to find the girl's true killer, in spite of the strong evidence against her son. At some point, her investigation goes from simply trying to prove his innocence to trying to prove literally anyone else guilty. The twists along the way range from merely tense to legitimately shocking. And all throughout, Bong keeps the pace and the mood dark and unsettling, which is exactly how a murder mystery like this should be. If you told me that a movie about an egotistical outdoorsman getting trapped by a boulder in a narrow canyon for 5 days would be one of my favorites of the year, I'd have probably snorted at you in disbelief. Sort of a... So, hey, credit where credit's due to director Danny Boyle and star James Franco for turning a merely kind of interesting tale of survival against the odds into something almost transcendentally watchable. Franco, as real-life outdoorsy guy Aaron Ralston, keeps the audience fixated on him throughout this entire ordeal. Certainly the gorgeous cinematography and Boyle's manic direction helps a great deal, but Franco gives Ralston both an overflow of charisma and an identifiable, sympathetic heart. His existential crisis through all of this is portrayed brilliantly, so much so that when the much ballyhooed scene of self-arm removal comes along, you don't just see his pain on the screen, you feel it too. This is a movie that will affect you, especially if you don't expect it to. I think the last thing I expected to enjoy this year was another goddamn monarchy movie. As much as I enjoyed The Queen a few years ago, I have grown increasingly tired of films depicting the dramatic lives of the British monarchy in all its stodgy, over-traditional glory. So happy day then that The King's Speech is anything but another prim and proper bore. Telling the story of Prince Albert's rise to the throne in the years leading up to World War II, this movie's focus is less on the monarchical politics and more on Albert's debilitating inability to speak without stammering terribly. As a man who will have to give speeches in his line of work, his condition is a major problem, one that his wife seeks out unconventional therapies for. Enter Lionel Logue, a brash Australian who is willing to cure Albert, but not while adhering to the overly strict rules set forth by the family. The strength of this movie is in the relationship between Albert and Logue, played by Colin Firth and Geoffrey Rush. They are incredible together as they feel out the limits of their friendship and take subtle jabs at one another in an appropriately dry British way. Director Tom Hooper also puts a fantastic focus on the stresses of Albert's condition, forcing us to suffer along with the on-screen audiences as Firth tries desperately to blurt out any sentence. It's a funny, heartwarming, and uplifting film that, dare I say it, inspires. If Exit Through the Gift Shop were just the cut-and-dried street art world documentary that it appears to be at first glance, then I don't really think it would have had a chance in hell of making my list. But this movie is absolutely not what it appears to be. At once, it is a look at the top names in the street art world through their best years and most memorable pieces. And it's also a blistering commentary on the notion of an underground art scene gone commercial. Exit Through the Gift Shop uses its central figure, a would-be documentarian, wannabe street artist named Thierry Guetta, to tell its story and also to show the audience how easily the art world can be duped by hype. Directed by Banksy, the most prankish of all street artists working today, Exit Through the Gift Shop is a movie that keeps you guessing for a very long time before lifting the curtain on its deception in an absolutely astonishing way. This is without a doubt the funniest movie of the year and also one of the smartest. It really doesn't matter one bit that The Social Network is, by and large, a work of fiction. Its purportations of being the story of the founding of Facebook are largely irrelevant in the face of what the film actually is. A whip-smart, brilliantly acted encapsulation of both the formative years leading up to the internet's social networking explosion, and an examination of a completely fascinating personality in the script version of Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. As written here, Zuckerberg is an antisocial, borderline personality, obsessed with the notion of making his mark to simultaneously impress the exclusive clubs of Harvard and also spurn the girl who spurned him. Jesse Eisenberg is a breakout here as Zuckerberg, playing perfectly to the rhythms of Aaron Sorkin's dialogue and showing us a Zuckerberg that, despite being a colossal asshole, is also utterly enthralling to watch. The Social Network has been played up by many critics as an incredibly important film, but more to the point, Social Network is also an incredibly entertaining one. Real or imagined, it's a story that will hook you. If I can recall correctly, this is the only movie I actually bothered to go see twice this year in theaters. And it was most definitely better the second time around. Christopher Nolan's filmmaking prowess is well documented up to this point, but what he pulls off with Inception is something close to genius. At its core, this movie is a fairly standard heist movie with a troubled one-last-job protagonist getting himself and his team in well over their heads as they aim to take down a score involving a major corporate bigwig. What makes Inception such a phenomenal film, however, is the world Nolan builds around it. Everything is about dreams. And as these master thieves enter the minds of their marks, we experience a phenomenal variety of incredible sights and sounds. But more importantly than that, we experience these things with a very clear rule set in mind, one that governs everything we see and experience in the film. Nolan doesn't waste time trying to explain every facet of this technology or these rules, just enough to get us to understand how the rules come into play, and then we're thrust into the perilous world of the mind, painfully aware of every danger that may come into play as they go deeper and deeper into dreams. Nolan reportedly spent years writing and perfecting the script, and that effort really does show. Plus, I mean, honestly, between the castings of Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Tom Hardy in this thing, Nolan might as well have had a direct line to my man-crush dream journal. Yeah, another year, another completely awesome Pixar movie, though this is one I actually didn't see coming. After the decent, if not overly excellent Toy Story 2, plus the 10-year gap between the sequels, I wasn't really sure what this movie was going to offer. What it did offer was one of the most heartwarming examinations of the relationship between a kid and his toys, and what happens when that kid grows up and begins to let go of childish things. Of course, most real kids don't have walking, talking toys with emotional reactions to that abandonment, but that makes Toy Story 3's story no less affecting. As Woody, Buzz, and the gang find themselves no longer of use, the bulk of Andy's toys end up in a retirement home, otherwise known as a daycare center. But this retirement home quickly becomes a prison run by the affably ruthless Lotso Huggenbear. The adventure on display here is, of course, thrilling, but one of the most impressive things about Toy Story 3 is its ability to juggle an absolutely massive voice cast, including newcomers like Ned Beatty, Michael Keaton, and Timothy Dalton, and also still manage to make each new character incredibly memorable. More than that, though, is how much Toy Story 3 manages to tug at the heartstrings of anyone who has ever truly loved their toys. The 10-year gap between movies proved a perfect time frame to let Andy grow up alongside the original film's audience. It was an incredibly intelligent move, and it makes the film's conclusion one of the most perfect things I've seen in a movie in years. A great Pixar movie might be kind of a foregone conclusion at this point, but one this close to perfect is anything but. There are myriad reasons why Winter's Bone stuck with me the most out of all the films I saw in 2010. Its bleak, haunting atmosphere, its depiction of a slice of life not many filmgoers get to see without a lot of poverty-porn pity, its incredible performances from its entire cast, chief among them lead actress Jennifer Lawrence, and its absolutely gripping tale of a young girl forced to grow up and face the dire circumstances around her head-on, not just for her own survival, but for the survival of her family. Lawrence plays Ree Dolly as a laser-guided missile of dogged determination after she learns that her meth-cooking father put the family's house up for bond after his latest charge and then subsequently disappeared. What follows is a tense, antagonistic, almost film noir-esque journey through a small meth-damaged community of the Ozarks that she occupies as she tries to find her father before it's too late. Director Deborah Granick paces this journey brilliantly, increasing the danger and the stakes bit by bit as the movie goes along, while allowing just enough time for the atmosphere of this place to encompass the audience. This is a dark movie, and frequently a depressing one, but it is also not one without hope, love, and at least some measure of happiness to be found. I loved every part of this movie, and as such, it is most definitely my favorite of the year. That about sums up my list for the year, but as always here at Screen, we want to see what you thought too. We want to know what your best movies were, your worst, and whatever other strange categories you can possibly come up with. So post them in the comments, post them on your profile, email them to us, do whatever you want. We want to see the best lists come out of our best users, and we are looking forward to seeing what you have to say. This is a great year for film, and I certainly am looking forward to next year as well. So Until then, see you later.